is fun. This deck is super awesome.
All right, guys. We're on, and welcome to another Storytellers Happy Hour. And we are here with one of our absolutely amazing authors, Alicia, who also got to put up
Hello.
with our shit. I mean, our vibrant personalities during our MFA program. So if you didn't know us then, actually, I feel sorry for you because we were a lot of fun. But anyway, so anybody who's never seen this before, you're like, who are these three people and why are they on my freaking live stream? I'm the founder and executive editor of Running Wild and RIZE Presses. Teehee is actually one of our fantastic authors, and we can talk about it now,
Yeah,
right?
it's
Yes.
official.
Yes. So we actually published a short story collection of his that was named one of the best of the year by Kirkus Reviews. And we are going to publish a brand new mystery novel of his through
So
RIZE.
excited.
Yeah, science fiction.
Woo! So actually not next year. It's probably going to be 2025, but yeah, anyway, whatever. And then Alicia, we published her memoir that was like, it got insane reviews, and I'm so incredibly proud of her for being willing to write it, because honestly, a memoir is not easy. And two, being willing to go real, because some people like skim the whole memoir thing and they don't really like tell it like it is, and she went for it. And you have to read it, guys. You just have to read it.
It is very not holding back.
It's very not holding back. So once a month, Teehee and I invite a couple of people to come have some booze. If you do it, if you don't, all good. Mocktails are awesome. And at this point, I'm now going to hand it off to Teehee to explain the rest.
Yes. So this concept kind of, I forget how it came about, but it's mostly just telling stories off the cuff. Like if you also, maybe we can throw back to grad school. Our grad school is on a private island off the coast of Connecticut. You're stuck there. You have nothing to do but talk. So there's lots of storytelling going on. So we wanted to do this storytelling show. So the way that we do this, actually, this is season 2. And we have our story prompts developed by The Moth. We are not legally affiliated with The Moth. They are not sponsoring us.
They would probably be horrified if they knew we were doing this, but that's okay.
Hopefully they would feel very proud and happy. But yeah, so they have a deck that's like a whole bunch of different cards with different themes. So we usually pull one card, and then we each have to tell a story about that theme, on that theme, off the cuff. No rehearsing, no prepping. We haven't prepped anything. However, when I was shuffling the deck, a card fell out and it was kind of juicy. So this time we have the option of one of two different themes. So the first theme is scandal. Tell a story about something scandalous. And the second one is destiny. Which, so you're probably thinking like, well, I don't know. I was thinking, I'm like, those two are so good though. It's like hard to choose one over the other. So
we were like, before we went live, we're like, well, maybe we'll just do both. Like, you know, and by the way, it doesn't have to be true. Like we're all bullshit artists, right? Hence why we're writers and such. So
yeah,
you know, we could just make some crap up and you guys won't know. I mean, well, I don't know. If you know,
They have no way of verifying any of
there's no way you can verify.
Prove it.
Yeah.
Prove it. I dare you.
Actually, that would be fun. Like if you could if one of us actually tells some complete crap and someone can somehow prove it, like I'll give you some kind of like gift.
Swag.
I'll give you swag, right? Well, we have swag. We've got t-shirts. I'll give you whatever paperback book you want. If you can prove that you can figure out which one of our stories is complete crap, meaning a lie, and you can prove it. So it's 2-part. It can't be 1 part. You got to do both.
Oh man. So so now everyone is telling 2 stories, one on each theme.
Yeah.
And because we don't know, like I don't know who's gonna be lying amongst the 2 of y'all. We haven't decided any of that yet, but this is fascinating.
Yeah. So how about that? So we'll do 2. We both do scandal and destiny, and one of them has to be a lie.
and one of them has to be a lie.
I feel like as the nonfiction writer, this is really, really unfair.
Okay, fine.
No, it's
Well,
not.
now, how about this? We both do Scandal and Destiny, and at least one of them's a lie, but not all of us has to do a lie.
Yeah, if you want to do a lie, and then it's up to the people to figure it out. I still have, okay, I think I still have 2 stories now.
Okay.
But
Dude,
we'll
you
get
have so many stories like Bite Me. Like, there's no way you don't have. I mean, come on. Even if it's not yours, like it could be like your grandma's. I'm just saying. And just
Okay.
names, right? Because
Now
my scandal's not a me thing, so it's a family. But I'm not gonna. I can't name names anyway because I don't know them. But go ahead.
Don't do that. Never do that.
I totally have permission to tell this person's scandalous story, so I'm gonna
Yay! Okay.
All right, who starts? I don't want to start.
I'm not starting. Get out of here.
All right, fine. Fine. Then that means we're starting with Scandal because that's
Fearless leader.
okay. So, growing up, so my father grew up, he was born in 1922. So he grew up during an era where you don't say like, I love you. You don't share, right? Like you only tell what you absolutely need to tell, right? So it was an interesting situation because then like subsequent generations were much more like open about their experiences and stuff like that. So, you know, I grew up in a very, like he grew up in a very proper home where you only speak proper English, right? You cannot have an accent of any shape or form. You don't use contractions. You must, you know, walk a specific way. You must behave a specific way, blah, 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 right? So my dad, and mind you, I was very, my father, he was like everybody's neighborhood father because although like that's how, you know, like this is how things are kind of thing, he was also incredibly open-minded. So he was like, you know how every neighborhood has a dad or a mom that like they consider them your own mom and dad because you know you can go to them with anything and like it's not a thing, right? So that was my dad. Okay. So I'm in my room and I don't know, like listening to music because I was like a huge music geek growing up, and I still am. And my father was a radio personality, so right? Like, of course, I'm a music nerd. Okay, so he comes into my room and he was like, you know, I just realized I thought you might find this interesting. And I was like, okay. And he says, so you know that on my side of the family, both your it was your great great grandma and your great great grandfather who came through, I think it was Ellis Island, right? And on your mother's side, it was basically the same thing. And I was like, oh, okay. Actually, I've got 2 scandals. So he's like, well, I still remember when I was a kid, because my grandmother passed away when my father was only like 12, 13, something like that. So he walked in and she was putting together a care package. And he says, you know, oh, who's that? And he reads the name off of the box. And she says, oh, that's your great cousin, blah, 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 right? And he's like, what do you mean? I've never heard of this person before. And she says, oh, well, your great grandmother, change that. Your great grandfather on my side actually came over to the States due to religious persecution. And in order for him to make it, he stole someone's identity. So back in the day, how it would work is like if you needed to get the hell out of whatever country you needed to get out of, I say back in the day, but it probably still happens. You would be able to purchase the birth certificate of someone who had died. And then that becomes your identity because like they didn't take great records, right? And especially come to the States, they didn't do fingerprints. There was no face recognition. There was none of that, right? It was just basically, here's this piece of paper that says you are who you are. So they took on that identity from that point forward. So I have no idea what my real grandmother's last name was because of that. I mean, at the time my father said it, but it was one of those like hit and run things, right? You know, when someone says something and you go, oh, uh-huh. And then like 5 minutes later, you're like, wait, what? I was listening to Motley Crue. How the hell did we get there? Like, I have no idea, right?
I was just minding my business, and now everything I know about my family is different.
It's completely wrong. Like, what the hell? So yeah, so that one, that's my first one. But do you want me to tell the second one now, or do you want me to? Oh, okay. All right. My second scandal. So this one's on my mother's side. So on my mother's side, her, now this one, I'm not sure if it's on her mother's side or her father's side, but one of her grandparents came through, again, Ellis Island, but they were French. But at that time, the French were not actually very happily embraced, for lack of a better term, in New York. But they didn't want to move on, right? They wanted to stay in New York. So what they did is they just basically went around lying, saying that they were English, so they could open a pub in downtown New York City. And it ended up being like one of the most popular English pubs in downtown New York. So although I actually come to think, I think that it was my mother's side. Man, the females in my family are crafty. So yeah, so they like faked everything, the accent and all that.
Yeah, I was going to ask about the accent, because there's a big difference between a British accent and a French accent.
Oh yeah, they faked it, man. I mean, now mind you, the countries are right next to each other. It's not all that hard to figure out, but yeah. So those are the two family scandals I'm willing to share at this moment in time, because everyone's dead and who cares?
Yeah. Where could this bar have originally been in New York? This would be a fun project to go back and try to find where that building is.
Well, if anyone tries, my mother's last name on her father's side was Kramer, Kramer, and I actually don't remember my grandmother's her maiden name, but at least that's a starting point. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Let's like I mean, because New York had so many different bars, like Come and Go and everything, but it sounds like that one was successful. But like, who knows? Like, it could be like a condo building now,
right? There's no way it still isn't in. Now, my grandfather on my mother's side, I know he owned like retail stores and all that kind of stuff, because growing up, my grandparents owned like a corner store, and it was in Florida, in Fort Lauderdale. It was like, you had beer and wine, and it was that kind of retail store, like to attract tourists and stuff. So my family definitely on my mother's side have a background of owning their own businesses that aren't necessarily fully legal, but hey, whatever works, man.
Whatever works. And man, the law was so much different then, because of like all that surveillance and stuff. That would be like one of the advantages of being born in a past time. You could get away with
so much more. Oh my God. Yeah.
I know for a fact I have con artists in my family, but if I had been born earlier with like this racial indeterminacy.
No. Well, and it's interesting.
Oyster.
If you look at all the different like racial and religious persecution over the years, like it's stuff where you're like, no shit, like I would have never guessed that one. You know what I mean? Like, because it's like very country dependent, Yeah.
Yeah.
Our family. Alicia.
Yeah, go on.
Oh, sorry. No, go.
I was going to say, my family has a little bit of that without telling on people and getting myself in trouble. But like some of my extended family, because we're all mixed, like even as late as like World War II, because that disrupted a lot of things, like people just like fully pass as whatever race they looked like. And we didn't
Oh,
like, I didn't know that I had certain relatives until like the late 90s when they all found each other, because they're like, oh, I've been lying and saying I was white this whole time, but I'm actually not. And so like, let's
yeah.
go meet the real family. And you're like, oh, some of y'all are brown. And I'm like, whoa, some of my relatives are white. Like,
Like, how is that? Like, how's that work out? Oh my God, that's awesome.
all right, Alicia.
It's all you, sweetheart.
Okay, scandal. Scandal. All right. All right. We'll do like, I don't know. We'll do this one. Okay. So I
You
come
have,
from work,
I mean,
huh?
shit, you have that many scandals? Like, damn.
He knows, but I'm gonna throw it back a little.
All right,
Just
all right.
like a childhood one. Okay. So, I'm from Warwick, Rhode Island. I grew up behind the airport. And uh the one thing the community has in common is that we will all go through the police logs pretty regularly in our
What?
local paper. Yes, we will. Everybody reads the police log.
Okay.
Everybody does. You get the Warwick Beacon. You read the police. I don't know. It's like when you get to a certain age and you always read the obituaries, but
Mm,
except this is your whole life and you read the police logs
okay.
to keep up with people. So
Let's see what
keeping in
shows.
mind that everybody reads the police log. So this had to have been fifth or sixth grade.
Mhm.
I was out sick one day from school. And
Okay.
it just so happened that someone who shares my last name,
Uh-oh.
a dude, I'm just not going to get specific with family members anymore. So, anyway, a gentleman who shares my last name, who I may or may not have been related to, ended up in the police log for domestic violence.
Ooh.
But
Ooh.
the date coincided with when I was out of school. So I went to school the following day, and all of a sudden, you have to know this about me too. I got made fun of a lot, and I got into a lot of altercations. Like, I fought back. I wasn't like a meek bullied child. Like, I gave as good as I got.
Sweet.
I go back, and everybody's all of a sudden like really nice to me.
Mm.
Like, like the kid who like walks up to me and goes, because my nose was big. None of that. Kids asking me how I'm doing, telling me my art is nice.
Oh my Lord.
And I'm just kind of like, why is everyone weird towards me?
Mhm.
Also, at that point in time, for whatever reason, I was very close with our DARE office. I even won an essay contest and a bunch of t-shirts.
Okay.
DARE doesn't work. So I don't remember her name, but I was like, DARE officer, does it seem like everyone's being kind of weird towards me? And she goes, is everything okay at home? Mind you, like, I'm living at home with like a severe alcoholic father,
Mm.
and like, we're poor.
Yeah.
Okay? So, and there's always some drama, whether like who's fighting with who, adults fist fighting with each other, or getting into altercations, or dad throwing something or breaking my recorder over mom's head. And so like
Oh, fun.
things aren't great at home, but we were taught not to talk about that.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, yeah, everything's fine. Business as usual. Um, and she's like, well, in the paper, so and so was, and I was like, oh yeah, that's, a person I may or may not be related to. And she said, well, everybody thought that was your dad, and they thought you were out of school because someone beat the shit out of you.
Oh.
And like, I went to school with my mom's friend's kid, and he went home and told his mother that my mother and I had the shit beat out of us, and that's why I was out of school.
Wow.
Um, but I was very like offended by, again, knowing how my home life is. That is what appalled me. I was
Right.
like, how dare you spread such a heinous, egregious rumor about my father?
Yeah.
How dare you?
How dare
This
you?
is the same one who months before got shit-faced at like a minor league hockey game that all my friends had tickets to. It was like a school thing.
Oh
Got
wow.
shit-faced, fell in the stands, almost got hit by a car, like
Oh, sorry.
peed in the parking lot.
Wow.
And it was like traumatizing, and everybody saw that, but I was like, how dare you accuse my father and sully his good name by saying that he was in the police log? He's not been in the police log in years. How dare you?
Oh my God, I love you. I love you
So that's how I rushed to the defense of
your father.
I had to defend his good name and his standing within the community.
Obviously.
I
How
also
dare they?
with that rule of like we don't say what's going on at home because we had
Yeah.
my parents' marriage was tumultuous. My father most likely probably had undiagnosed mental illness stuff, and like we just like anyone at school because like your parents teach you like if you tell anyone at school what happens at home, then like child services is gonna come and take you.
That's what they told me too. I would end up in the guidance counselor if I even said anything. And I just remember my parents being like, don't tell people our business. You don't go spreading our dirty laundry everywhere. And now I'm a nonfiction writer. So.
Well, honey, that's on you, that second part. Like, we ain't got nothing on that. You all made that happen, so.
In the theme of school-based scandal stuff, I have a couple small ones that I think I could string into one story.
Okay.
So, or at least this first one because it was pretty good. And I'm not going to name names, although people might.
I feel like I'm going to probably know who you're talking about.
Maybe. Okay, so in elementary school, my gym teacher, I will not say his name, was the uncle of my best friend Sabrina. Me and my friend Sabrina, we were best friends ever since kindergarten. By the time we're in like third grade or second grade, we're in the same gym class. And we're like, fuck yeah. And like even more so because Sabrina's like, my uncle's the gym teacher. So we can get away with anything. Like we can't get in trouble. We totally get in trouble all the fucking time. The first time we get put on the wall, you know how you do with little kids, like you're in trouble, go stand on the wall. But then we started laughing and talking and like being unruly. So then we have to move into his office where we discover a bottle of tequila. And then the gym teacher feels bad that we're not exercising. So we have to come out with the rest of the class, like jog around the little laps or whatever. But we like have the tequila. I could swear I can't not remember if we drank it, but we definitely were passing it back and forth and pretending to be drunk because of, I guess, how we grew up. You know these things.
That's a thing, though. That is a thing. I didn't know it was a thing for other people. Go ahead.
Yes. And we get caught with it.
Oh.
And they're like, where did you get this from? Where did you get this from? Because like, you can't have alcohol in an elementary school. But we're like, we got it from the gym teacher. And he's not get in trouble. And so my friend Sabrina, over the years, a couple, like maybe the next year, but over that time, because he had it out for us. And I actually blame this guy about why I'm not athletic at all anymore, because he just made me hate sports. He was always gunning for us. But my best friend was his niece. But my friend Sabrina was like, you know what? He's kind of an asshole. And my own relatives, because it was a small town in Iowa, everybody knows everyone. And they're like, that guy's a fucking asshole. So suddenly he's gone. He's not our gym teacher. And we have this substitute gym teacher who is so much nicer for like 2-3 weeks. And it's like heaven. I actually got to play during gym. We got to all learn basketball because before, when it was the bad gym teacher, we had to sit and wait for him to like make a free throw shot before we can like play in the gym. And so like sometimes we wouldn't get to play because he's terrible and he can't make a free throw. I hope he's dead. I don't know if he's dead. My friend Sabrina will tell me anyway. No sympathy for this guy.
Okay.
So he comes back after this long absence, and his jaw is still completely wired shut, and he still has casts on his legs and crutches. And he tries to explain to the class because we're all like, and he talks with this weird robot voice because he has to speak through this thing because his jaw had to be reconstructed. And people are like, oh my God, what happened to you, all these kids? And he's like, so this is what happened. I was walking home one night and this guy tried to rob a woman at the ATM and I stood up for her and the robbers beat me up and I almost died. And I raised my hand, you know, because I'm so polite because I'm in like 4th grade. Yeah. And then I stand up and I'm like, Mr. I'm not going to name him. I know for a fact that my Uncle Carlos beat the shit out of you out of a bar because you called him the N word. And that's why your jaw is broken.
Oh my God!
But kids don't even think twice about saying shit like that. I miss being a kid sometimes.
And it was true. And for the rest of the school year, I never got to play sports. I always had to sit on the wall. No. Now I'm fat. Fuck you, guy.
Oh my God.
He also eventually got fired for touching kids inappropriately, but that was like decades later.
Wow. So he had it all. Dude had it all going. Oh my God.
Yay, that's an easy family scandal story because actually the one time my family pops up, they're actually the good guys.
Yeah, we love that.
Yeah. Yay, Mom, Yay. Don't be mad at me.
Everybody in my story is dead, so we're good.
I'm telling you, you just gotta pick stories that either there's no fucking way they're watching this, or they're dead.
Or they're watching it from down below.
Going, guess what?
They're looking up at us and smiling.
Exactly.
Clearly, obviously, they're smiling.
I said that in the back of a limousine on the way to a person's funeral. I said that. I said, I'm sure she's just looking up at us and laughing right now. And then I was like, too soon?
What is that quote about like writing nonfiction that like if people wanted you to write nice things about them, they should have treated you better? I'm like 100%.
Right?
I have been sent that quote by my sister several times throughout the years. And I won't comment further.
Okay.
I understand. So maybe one of these, for the viewers at home, one of these stories is potentially a lie. Yeah. And I don't know how you fact check us.
But go for it, right?
But you're welcome to try.
Someone's gonna like dig through the police logs of Warwick Beacon from like the late 90s.
or some of these maybe like this concatenation of multiple stories that is technically that makes it a lie, I guess, because it's true.
Inspired by a true story.
Yes, inspired by a true story.
And that would count. But again, you've got to prove it. You have to be able to prove that it's
prove it. Bring the receipts. I want receipts.
Seriously.
You got to prove it. And extra points if you can find a picture of me in 4th grade because not very many of them exist anymore.
Oh, love bug. There aren't many pictures of me. Well, no. I'm gonna shut up because I'm still good friends with one of my best friends since I was like 5. And bitch got pictures of me from like, oh my Lord. And every once in a while she'll be like, that's not how you looked. I'm like, you know what? That was not necessary. That was not necessary.
Yes. It's important to keep in touch and be friends with these people. So don't blow up your spot later on in life.
It's so funny. Like, I don't know about you guys, but like I've got friends that, because our next thing's Destiny anyway, right? So I have friends that like will get out of touch, like no harm, no foul. There's no, and then all of a sudden we'll pop into each other's lives again. And it's as if like we're still finishing each other's sentences. We still want to do, the same stuff that we wanted to do back in the day. You know what I mean? Like, and so she's one of those. And the other, she actually invited me to, this is not the Destiny story, by the way. She had invited me to go, because she has all these, she used to do a lot of, she was a singer and she did a lot of stage. and all that kind of stuff. So she had connections to get us into what is it, the Castle of Magic? No, Magic Castle. That's it, in LA, which is like globally known. Like if you see Teehee's face, you
It took
can't.
me a second, but I remember. Yeah,
You got to know people to get into the Magic Castle, and so she got us in, and it was so funny because the whole time we're talking, it's like I'll say one word, she'll say another, I'll say the next word, and then we'll finish each other's sentences. Like we're still like that, like the whole time. So I don't know, but like it's so cool to have friends like that you still, it's like you're part of each other, if that makes sense.
and because it's like essentially you're always the same person, even though you go through different stages of life. Like there's still that like kernel of you that is like you. And maybe this is a little too personal, but like for a long time, I thought that kernel was like trauma because of how I grew up.
Oh no, I get that. Yeah,
it's a kernel.
It's
one of the kernels.
One of the kernels. It's not the defining
It
part.
might be the topping on the kernel, the seasoning, the kernel.
Well, if you're lucky, you realize the core of you is awesome, right?
Yeah.
Like at some point in your life. And so to me, it's like the people who you allow to know that person, they're the ones who keep coming back throughout your life, and the ones that you're kind of like, I don't really care. They may come, they may go, whatever. So
we should transition to the Destiny story, but I have to get more beer.
All right.
Yes. I mentioned the T word one too many times. I will be right back.
It's all good. So, Alicia, what have you been up to? Because you published the memoir.
I did.
Anything new?
I am a little over halfway done with my second book.
Oh, cool.
There was like a 1.5 year long period where I just didn't write it all. I didn't write it all. And then I reconnected with a family member after like a decade who is also a writer, and she encouraged me to pick back up again. And then it just started like flowing out of me. But also I have a kid who's about to start school, which is when I plan to finish the story.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm 2 years sober, and I am medicated and mentally sound.
Awesome. Woo!
That's what I've been up to.
I can't speak to T or I on the medicated and mentally sound parts, but
no. I mean, I think I'm mostly mentally sound, but I'm definitely inebriated most of the time. Which is its own form of medication. I've been trying to write a memoir, Alicia, and it's hard.
It's really hard.
It's really hard. And I'm like, because people are like, you have to kind of like tell on yourself or like not be afraid to make yourself look bad. But I was writing on Sunday and decided to stop because I was like, I think I'm like going too hard on myself. Like maybe I need to like take a walk and like get some sun or something.
Yeah, you need to step away from it. Like I used to say when the first book came out, they're like, how'd you do it? I'm like, ain't no shame in my game. Like actually there is some shame in my game because the shame parts aren't written. But I ran into like a wall with the second book where the piece is only going to work if I disclose a secret shame that maybe only a handful of people know about. And I'm like, but am I ready? Am I ready to sit in interviews and live streams and be like, yeah, no, totally, I'm an open book. Like,
yeah.
It's very,
very,
It's tricky.
I mean, you don't have to be, but your book's not going to be very interesting.
Well,
and oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No. Like I've had several people tell me I had to write memoirs, and like actually the head of our program, I wrote the beginning of a memoir, and after he heard it, he goes, "Oh my!" Like he just blurted out, "You're the next Mary Carr," and I was like, "Oh fuck no, no! If anyone
never mind,
for sure." I mind you, I adored her memoirs, and they were gorgeously written. Like I am not dissing Mary Carr, but I don't know how she did it because that was crazy painful. Like
Yeah.
What she went through was like crazy. But anyway,
And then
so
like that's a compliment, but it's also terrifying.
yeah,
But
yes,
also you would have to sustain that, and that's what makes writing memoirs, like long form memoir, so hard, is you have to sustain the mindset to write that shit. It's not a
it's
good, it's not a healthy time.
it's not just the mindset. It's you need to figure out what theme are you going to follow throughout this memoir that, to your point, right, that you can sustain, but that you're
Mm-hmm.
comfortable in sharing at that level. Because that, knowing what I know about Teehee and about you and myself, that level, that's some serious stuff, right? Now, and it can be very helpful to people, which to me, that's the only reason to write a memoir like that, right? Where you
Yeah.
can provide benefits to people who've been through similar stuff or who maybe they just don't understand, right? So to gain that understanding. But I'm not, I haven't figured out what my theme is. So
I figured out my theme, and the first 20 pages were really great. And now I'm on like page 24, and I'm like, God, like, stop beating the shit out of yourself emotionally.
oh
Like,
yeah, don't do
There's
that.
the early drafts are always like a lot of self-flagellation,
Oh,
and
yeah,
then you have to go back and fix that, and then you got to go back and see, like, am I just oversharing for shock value, or like is there a point to this, or is this just an inside thought that belongs in my journal? Like
mm.
it's not as easy as just writing your life on paper.
I'm so glad to hear that, because I'm like, I opened the can of worms of like, all right, let me dive in and talk a little bit about how I'm a piece of shit. And then I just kept going and going and going.
Yeah, that's the first draft, and that's normal. That won't be in your final product. It's okay.
Yeah,
This
exactly.
feels not healthy. It's like, let me go walk around in paradise for a minute and forget the 3 pages I wrote that are like,
For me, it's having that really high level outline and knowing what my overall theme is that keeps it safe. You know what I mean? But if I can't find that, because I actually wrote a self-help book, and I'm working on with an agency on, like, how do we tweak it, like that kind of thing. And like that, I can use some of the stories that would be in a memoir, but it's because it's like, here's this narrative that's in this chapter, and right, and then there's like how you deal with it, whatever, right? But if you took that overarching, like, that's a whole nother that's like, yeah.
yeah. But I mean, and I do have like, I have the theme. I feel like it's a bit like a tennis ball thing where you're
Yeah.
oscillating between two very different emotions,
Mm.
which I think is fun and interesting. But as the first draft writer of it is like, wow.
Woo! Yeah.
Yeah.
It's totally normal.
And you guys are plotters. Like that sounds stressful.
I'm not,
I'm a pantser. Like I write the pieces and then I try to find the theme.
by nature, I am not naturally a plotter. By nature, I'm a pantser. And then I just found that, like, even just really super high level, like, bullet points of where I want to go, because I'm going to change it while I'm going along, but it helps me stay focused.
I feel like I started out as a pantser, but I am now a plotter. Like
Yeah.
with the second book, the sci-fi book, I had an outline. Did I follow it? Not
No.
always, but I had the outline. And like sometimes there were like some parts of it where like you're 2 pages into the story, and then I would look at the outline. I'm like, holy fuck, this outline is no longer relevant to anything. And I
And you
wrote
should
like
do it. Like,
5
so,
paragraphs.
yeah. So what?
It's
You
just
will throw out a lot of stuff. My book ended up being what, 140 pages. It was 400 pages in the early stages. I
Wow.
threw away hundreds and hundreds of pages of like garbage.
God damn, Alicia. That's a lot.
And then some of it's just going to be in another book, because when you write, because I'm a pantser, I do a lot of writing that at the end when I go to draw it all together, I'm like, oh, this hasn't, I can't tie this in. This doesn't make sense. Save it for later.
yeah.
That makes sense.
I'm kind of glad I became a pantser. Also, like science fiction is such a thing that like being a pantser writing science fiction is just
It's not conducive.
it's
Yeah.
not conducive. You got to know where you're going.
You're going to have like,
That's
that
very
plot's
true.
going to be Swiss cheese with all the holes. If you're not plotting it.
We'll figure it out. We'll make it happen, right? It's all good.
Yep. All right. So let's.
I am not going first. Y'all can bite me.
Okay. Okay. I'll go first. My destiny story. Which, okay, yeah. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not true. We'll see. Um, also not a good way to start that. But the very first time I visited Los Angeles, I was still living in New York. And I'm on these different dating apps. So like I like start talking to this guy who's like really cute. He's like an actor and a stunt man. And we ended up meeting at a bar, Precinct Bar, which is a gay bar in LA. And we meet for like drinks and like nothing else. Like not like, oh, we're definitely gonna hook up or whatever. We're like, let's just get some drinks and talk because you seem interesting and like he seems interesting. And we're sitting there talking and we're like hitting it off on like a crazy weird level.
Mhm.
Like, our grad school was a Catholic school, right? And it was like a Jesuit Catholic school. And he grew up through an entire Jesuit Catholic like education. I was like, oh, that's really fascinating. And then all sorts of other things. Like my best friend is very deep in Shambhala, but his grad school experience was all about Shambhala Buddhism. And we're just like, every detail is like, oh my God, it like opens up this whole other box. And the bartender is like watching us and he's like, so is this like a third, fourth date? And we're like, no, this is like a first date. The bartender's like, wow, like y'all are meant to be together. And we're like,
Right.
oh my God, it definitely seems that way. And then we kept joking that like at the end of our first date, I'll just like go back to my hotel and grab all of my stuff and just spend the rest of the week with, which happened. And then it's time to go back to New York. And he was like, yeah, go pack and then come back here. You can just like move in with me. I met all of his friends. They all played Dungeons and Dragons. I'm a Dungeons and Dragons nerd.
Yeah.
I was like, all these things are just like, this is perfect. But then the week is over and you're like, crap, this was like a perfect week in LA. And now I have to go back to New York. And I was like, maybe we should try to see each other again. Like, let me know if you're ever in New York and I'll let you know if I'm ever in LA. And he's like, I don't think I'm ever going to be in New York. And he was like, but I am going to be in Washington, D.C. in a couple of weeks. And
Okay.
I work in politics. And I was like, I'm in Washington, D.C. about once a month. So like, when are you there? And it ends up lining up. And so I'm like, oh my God, like, fate.
Yay!
And then we have like the second kind of meet cute. So he was in Washington, D.C. for the Asian American Film Festival in Washington, D.C. And I was there to lobby Congress. So he had made this short film that was getting like, premiered at this film festival. And his roommate, who I had met / best friend, who was the cinematographer at the last minute, couldn't go. And he's like, I kind of want you to see my film. And like, it would be fun to go to this film premiere at this film festival. So why don't you just like pretend to be my best friend, the cinematographer? And then like, because he already has credentials and stuff like that. And he's like, they're not going to check IDs. And I'm like, yeah, sure, fine. So like one of the funniest things is we're walking there from my hotel and he's an actor, right? So I'm like, and his, I'm not going to name him, but I guess I will name his roommate. His roommate's name is Gabe. And I'm like telling him like, I've met Gabe, so I'm trying to walk like Gabe and like inhabit this physicality. And he's an actor, so I'm asking for all this advice. I'm like, how do I talk like Gabe? And we go through this whole thing of like me building up this character of Gabe. And then I walk up doing everything, and I'm like, hello, I'm Gabe. And they're like, yep, here's your lanyard. At the end of it, I thought that was gonna be much harder. And then I turn around and people are like, oh, you're so-and-so and you're Gabe who made this short film. Oh, you're the cinematographer. What speed of like light balance did you use on anything?
And you're like, ah!
Full 45 minutes to walk to this film festival.
Wow.
He could have told me a lot about cinematography and neither one of us thought to even bring it up. So I get asked this very technical question. I'm like,
Wow.
that's a great question. But you know what? I really have to use the restroom. I've drank too much water today. And I just bowl. And then my date comes in and he's like, he's like, are you in here? And I'm like, I'm here. And he's like, okay, they left. I answered everything. And I'm like, thank God. That's so embarrassing. I'm still getting over that embarrassment as we walk to the theater and find, surprise, my date's parents.
What?
Surprise him of like, oh my God, your short film is premiering, so we had to be here.
Oops.
And he's like, yeah, hey, here's Gabe.
I think. That's awesome.
And they went to high school together, right? So like the parents know Gabe.
Yeah. They're like, what the hell?
They're like, Gabe looks different. I'm like, I'm so sorry. I'm like trying to hold it together. Yeah, I've been through a lot of years. And like, let's keep walking this all the event organizers.
Oh my God.
Parents who were like, first generation Korean immigrants and stuff, they don't ask much further. They understand their son is gay and like whatnot. So they're like, there's something going on that's probably a sex thing that's somehow leaked into the public. And like, they're just not asking a question. And so that was our second date. Our third date ended up being in San Diego / Tijuana because he was working on a video game and I happened to be in San Diego. And then I was like, I've never been to Mexico. Let's go to Tijuana. So we do that. And then our fourth date. So like we have dated for like almost a year, but never lived anywhere near each other.
Oh, okay.
And like always when one of us was traveling, we would end up traveling. So this is the destiny. It seemed like it was gonna fit. And like, I love New York, but New York winters were starting to get on me. And like, I was like, I really enjoyed LA. I kind of like San Diego. It has its things. And I was like, I just want to be in a warmer climate. And like, I kind of like this guy. So like, might as well go for it. Yeah. I'm moving to LA. And he's like, that's awesome. Let me know where you end up living. So I finally found an apartment in Long Beach. And I'm like, hey, I'm in LA. I live in Long Beach. And he was like, wow, that is too far for me because I live in Highland Park. So this was fun and all.
Oh my God, no.
I broke it all off. I'm not driving to see you ever.
Wow. I mean, like I don't even know. Like, that's beyond a wow. That's like your Heine was traveling all over the fucking world before, and now that you're all of like maybe an hour away, he's like, yeah, no, honey, this isn't gonna work. Like, wow. Damn.
No, I wasn't even mad because when I lived in New York, if I met somebody who I really hit it off with, but I lived in Brooklyn and they lived in Harlem, I'm like, it's never gonna work. You're too far. Even though we live in the same city, but I'm like, I'm not taking the train back and forth.
Yeah.
I'm like, we live culturally too far.
I mean, I must admit that if I'm really into somebody, or at least they give good, then I would be like, yo, you can stay here for a while. Like, you can stay for days and then like go if you live like over an hour away. Like, it's all good, And if not, I'm like, yo, here's a burger, leave. But mind you, I've been married for over 10 years, so don't get any ideas. All right.
So fact check that, whoever's at home. Also, right? This video game is actually a pretty famous video game, and this dude is actually like really rich now.
Oh, nice. Dude, you like you can always just live with me and then be like, hey, guess what? I'm like 20 minutes away. Before
I moved to Mexico, I hit him up because I broke up with my boyfriend at the time. Mm-hmm. And when you go through those breakups and you reach out to all those people, like the one who got away. And I was like, hey, what's going on? Like, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, I'm totally married now and like kind of sort of retired from acting because that video game ended up being really huge internationally and I just get to live on royalties and smoke a ton of weed. And I'm like, that's great.
Fabulous. Great. Good for you. I have this one, I swear we'll go back on topic. So when I was younger, like I didn't attract a whole lot of, well, at least in my mind, right? I wasn't hot. I didn't attract a lot of people, whatever, right? And now that I'm not 17 or whatever, I like, all these very attractive gentlemen approach me, including very well-known individuals on like Twitter and so on, where I'm like, holy shit, it really is you. Why are you messaging me? Anyway, I have this one friend who is gorgeous and like he's like the complete package, right? And to the point where I have friends of mine who are like, why are you still married? Because he is really, 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 really into you. He's just not admitting it, right? Because they've like seen us hang out together or whatever, And I'm like, yeah, whatever. Okay, fine. Well, one day, let's say I got free tickets to something. I invited him to go with me just because like it was so last minute and he doesn't live far from me that I figured, why not? Right? We're good friends. Why not? Well, when we went to dinner, like after the show, he was like, do you have something you want to tell me? And I went, nope. He's like, are you sure? I'm like, mm-hmm. Absolutely. Because mind you, I'm still married. Like this has not changed. and nope. So yeah, no, I totally feel what you're talking about. I'm like, oh my Lord. But yeah, by the way, if as you get older, that suddenly these people who like you were like, I am so in love with you, or I could totally, whenever you want, they like come out of the woodwork. Yeah, don't be shocked. It happens.
Yeah.
And it's really weird.
I think I'm still waiting for that to happen. I've been told I'm somewhat intimidating.
You are not intimidating. Oh, bite me. Mm-mm.
Say that to gay men.
No. I mean, like, I don't know what it is. I think it's like just that as we get older, that like if we're into somebody, then all of a sudden it's like, you know what? I don't care. I'm just gonna say or do whatever I want.
It's honestly the confidence you get as you get older. I was just talking about this the other day. The older I get, like, you couldn't pay me to be like a teenager again or in my early 20s. I was worried about so many stupid things that just, who cares?
Right. Totally.
I go out in Crocs now. I don't care.
All right. I'm not doing Crocs. I just can't do Crocs.
I used to have a really good pair of Crocs.
I never, ever bought Crocs. Flip-flops, yes. Crocs, no.
In my defense, my mom bought them for me, but they ended up being very comfortable.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I went into a store and I went into a store seeking out Crocs and I selected a pair. And then Amazon accidentally sent me a pair by accident and it was a happy accident. And now I have 2 pairs of Crocs that I wear.
Okay. Great.
Destiny.
All right. So do you want to go next or should I go next? Either one, I don't care.
I'll go next.
Okay. I love that you're thinking about it. You're like, I don't know.
No. All right. So no, this is fun. It's going to be fun how we get from point A to point B. Okay. Like it's going to start sad, but it'll finish strong. Okay. So I would say that I have converted to a Crocs enthusiast because of a miscarriage. Stay with me.
Okay. All right.
So
I'm listening.
It was actually right after my first residency that I got pregnant back in 2015.
Wow.
And so it was not on purpose, but it was like, all right, I've been married a while. It's fine. Whatever.
Yeah.
So we went to the 8-week appointment. There's no heartbeat. They give me the Cytotec. They shove up there, and then you get the contractions, and it
Yeah.
um which is like painful, and like they don't warn you how traumatizing and painful that is. But anyway, so like um I've had 2 miscarriages. The second time was like more, it just felt like heavy period. Okay. This time, the first time, there was like a noticeable, like clearly like a sac that was containing this like 7-week old. It was a little bubble. And I was like, I can't flush that. So what do I do with it? So I put it in a Ziploc. I don't, I, I put it in a Ziploc and I put it in my makeup drawer, and I'm like, we will come back to this later. Let's go eat a burger.
Wow.
So I went to Five Guys after. And the next day I'm like, I'm going to bury it in the yard, but I don't want to just bury it in like it gets, you don't, close your mouth. It's okay. I'm okay now. It's fine. Uh, so I'm like, I don't take care of my yard. I don't like yard work. Okay. So my yard is a shithole at this point, and I have dogs. So like there's poop
Poop
and digging and
everywhere.
all. And so I'm like, all right, I'm going to bury it, but I'm going to start a garden. And I have never been able to keep a plant alive. I've killed cactuses, succulents. I don't know how to keep plants alive. I'll Google easiest plant to keep alive. Like, you'll get succulents and prayer plants, both of which I have killed. I think the only thing I can keep alive is like those bamboo shoots that you just have to leave in a glass of water. And even that, like, a couple of them dried out, and I don't know why. Like, why did they dry out? So anyway, I'm like, I'm gonna take up gardening. And so the next day we go by a rose bush. We bury the bubble, say a couple words, bury it under, and then put the rose bush there. But like, it's just a rose bush in the middle of like this shitty backyard that's covered in dog shit and like not maintained. And I'm like, we need mulch. So then I
Okay.
go through and we buy mulch, and we buy like little bricks, and then I get like these little ladybug bowling ball things, and I create like this garden. And then after that, I was like, I'm good at this. I'm gonna start growing my own vegetables. So I start getting all these gardening boxes, and like I'm out there. Also, like, I don't like dirt or bugs, so I don't know why I thought I could take up gardening. But I was like, oh, my shoes are getting dirty. I need different shoes. And I was like, Crocs are probably my best bet. I'm going to get a pair of Crocs. And so, but like, I went through the store, like, I was dead ass on these Crocs. I was comparing like colors. I was like, yeah, but like, I want it to be fun for when I wear out. I don't want it to just be play. I settled on some hot pink Crocs. And I was like, shit, these are comfortable.
For the garden.
And then a few months later, I see that they make other things besides just the standard Croc. And I was like, those sparkly flip-flops are Crocs, and people will never know. And so I own those Crocs. And then I bought the boat shoes. And I was like, I don't know why I've been dressing for style all these years. I could have been dressing for comfort this entire time. And so I had my gardening Crocs for the tomatoes I couldn't grow. I could grow scallions,
But
which
no.
I'm not 100% that those were scallions, though. They didn't taste like, I don't know what I was cutting up and putting on my eggs, but that's the only thing I could grow. That's the only thing I could grow. So I had my gardening Crocs
Yeah.
and my boat shoe Crocs, and then my sparkly flip-flop Crocs for when I wanted to doll myself up. And ever since then, I have been a Croc enthusiast, and over Christmas, ordered a pair of high heels. I didn't get a pair of high heels, but I ended up with like a pair of men's size 10 Crocs. And I was like, these are perfect for around the house. And I've been needing a new pair of Crocs. And I was like, what are the odds that I would order these beautiful Christmas themed high heels with a bow on them? Like, they were stiletto velvet, like, pump things, and get a lovely pair of Croc brand. They weren't even off brand, they were Croc brand.
All right.
And then I messaged Amazon, and they said, you can keep them, and we're gonna refund you. And if that's not destiny, I don't know what is.
It absolutely sounds like destiny.
I have questions about my understanding of Crocs and gardening because Crocs have holes in them.
Yeah,
I didn't say I was a good gardener.
All right.
Like I had questions too as I put my muddy socks and my muddy feet like to wash later. I was like, I didn't think this through.
Right.
I didn't say it made sense. I just said it was destiny.
Crocs for gardening.
Right. Alicia Crocs. I see there's this parallel. AC. Alicia Crocs.
There's one other question though, which is like the bubble in the makeup drawer. Because like in my head, I'm thinking like if something came out of me and like something has to happen with it, like the fridge or the freezers, or is there something wrong with me? Also, I watch a lot of Yellow Jackets.
You're not as lucid and reasonable as you think you're going to be when you're in the midst of trauma that you don't even realize how traumatic it like fair. I didn't. It felt very like mechanical, like this happened, and I was like, what do I do? Well, I want to keep it fresh, so I'll put it because I don't know what's going to happen to it if you just leave it out. Right. And so I put it in a Ziploc, and I was like, but I don't want to look at it. Mm-hmm. I don't want it out where I can see it. I just need to get it out of sight, out of mind. I don't want it near my food. Like I wasn't even thinking. And I was like, I'll just put it in my makeup drawer and I'll revisit this after I've had some iron and some time to think. And what I came up with was take up gardening.
Yeah.
So like your brain just isn't working when that's going on.
This makes perfect sense though, because in really crazy, like traumatic moments, you're kind of like step one, step two. But they might not, and they make total sense in the moment. But like when you go to retell it to other people, they're like, "What the fuck are you doing?"
You're completely reasonable and rational with a completely batshit line of thought.
Wait, and I love how when you tell people this, they act like, "What are you, stupid? Like, how did you come up with that?" And it's like, seriously? I was in the middle of trauma, and they're like, "Well, logically speaking, it's like, you know what? You're done. You're out. I don't.
You're done."
Yeah.
Logic is not very logical anyway.
I mean, you're gonna look back on it anyway and be like, "Well, that was stupid."
Yeah,
like,
but you're like, "That was fucked up."
Not the Crocs. I don't regret that shit for a second.
Well, you got them for free? Like, F that shit. Like, come on.
Everything has led me to that moment.
I would rock some Crocs down here. I don't care if no one would sleep with me again.
They have decorative charms for them now.
I know.
And a Lisa Frank hair.
I saw both those things on Instagram.
I so don't do any of that, but I've seen it. So, yeah.
The Lisa Frank nostalgia, I'm so here for. That was like totally my generation of like elementary school.
Trapper Keeper.
I look at it now and I'm like, was she on fucking acid? Like, this is so trippy. And as kids, we just like ate that shit up. And I'm like, no, this is like, I've done LSD. This is LSD.
Oh, wow. There you go.
That's why DARE doesn't work, to bring this full circle.
It actually took me a minute I'm like, DARE? What the fuck's DARE? And then I'm like, oh, right. Like, I don't know anybody who actually took it seriously, who was actually in an environment that was like propagating that kind of behavior. Like, maybe it worked if you were like in like a rich area or something, but nah.
Totally didn't work on me. I actually volunteered in high school to teach DARE as like a non-police officer to elementary school kids, and look at me now. Like,
I'm not. No judgy. No
I was
judgy.
watching that Netflix miniseries Painkillers about Oxycontin, and I was like, I remember when I used to snort Oxycontin. Like, just
oh my god!
Thanks, DARE.
This was so effective.
Like, nobody's out there giving me free drugs. Nobody. Like, that never happened.
Nah.
As a gay man, and you'd be surprised. I've never, this is bad. But here it goes. I've never paid for cocaine ever in my life.
Oh, I
Once
believe
down
that.
here in Mexico. In the United States, I've never paid for cocaine.
Well,
Well,
especially
at least Dare got that part right there, that you'd be offered it a bunch of times.
They don't tell you about the IKEA parking lot, which is always where I ended up doing cocaine. In various cities. It didn't matter what city. And it took me until like 2019 to actually go to an IKEA. Even though I've like had several
I'm really interested in this seedy underbelly of IKEAs where people are just doing cocaine.
IKEA parking lots, girl.
all right.
I bet during the pandemic it was wild.
Popping at the IKEA parking lot.
Right. Seriously. Although I've never done cocaine. I've never done any illicit drug, but I totally know what you're talking about. Just because of where I grew up. Mm-hmm.
This feels weird, but because of like the fentanyl thing and everything, I actually feel more comfortable talking about my past drug use because I'm so afraid of fentanyl. I will never do drugs again. And I'm like, thank God I got the drug experimentation out back when drugs were relatively safe, as opposed to now where like drugs will like definitely kill you.
Okay.
That is a thought. That is a thought.
Once again,
that's definitely a thought.
It seems logical and rational. That it's like it's easier to talk about drugs now because I don't do them anymore.
Right.
I was always way too afraid to do drugs. I only ever smoked weed and I did shrooms one time.
Wow. Okay.
I'd still do shrooms.
Okay.
I would not.
All right,
0 out of 10 would not recommend.
I'll take this back to the where are we? Destiny? Okay.
Destiny.
So this is not my destiny, but it's someone's. So when I was a teenager, I knew a lot of bands for various reasons, right? Wow, that sounded awful, but whatever. Okay, and so one of my best friends was engaged to one of the founders of a very famous band. And so we would get invited to all these different, things, whatever. So at one point they broke up, whatever. He and I stayed friends, but it was like tangential, right? Like, and so he would invite me to come out to different shows, right? Because at that point, in reflection, I was actually already well known from being on different TV shows, and which I still to this day have a hard time digesting that, but whatever. So he would invite me out, whatever, and he was auditioning basically new drummers. And so they had this new drummer with the band, and he and I were talking, whatever. And honestly, I was just tired, right? Because I'm either like a night owl or I'm an early bird, right? So in this part of my life, I could usually stay up to like, I don't know, 11, 12. And then beyond that, no, because I had to go to work the next day, right? Like I didn't have the luxury of like, this is sustaining my life. So I go and I'm hanging out in the van, like in the band's van. And this drummer, who, by the way, who is freaking hot. Like, I mean, like, he is like, he's built, right? He's got great everything, whatever. I talked to him for all of like 5 minutes. But he comes in and we're just sitting, we're like lying there, not lying there, we're sitting there talking. And all I'm thinking is, I really want to go home, but I promised I would stay through all the sets, right? And not realizing at the time the last set was at like 2 a.m. or something like that, because this is a dance club. So he turns to me And he says something like, I really, really need this gig. I feel like it's my destiny. And I went, oh, okay. He's like, so I need to like shake the van, you know, like we're, and at the time I was so tired. I did not understand what he was saying. And I went, yeah, sure. Cause I'm like, I don't know. Cause he didn't do that. He did something similar to that, but it wasn't your normal, like, hey, let's get it on. Right. And so I'm like, okay. Now, mind you, I didn't realize, again, now this is like in reflection, like at the time, like I hadn't dated anybody in the band. No, I hadn't, I barely dated. Like I was the nerd of all my friends, right? Like I was the person that like even their parents would come to for advice, which is fucking weird. Okay. But I'm just saying. So I'm like, I was like, yeah, sure, sure. So he starts shaking this van like as it, and I'm like, that's a lot, like in my head, right? Because I'm so tired. I was just thinking that's a lot, and it's like, and he does this for like I don't know, 5-10 minutes, whatever, and then finally, and he was like, and he's like, all right, and he says something, whatever, a couple, and I'm like, okay. And he goes, and I'm like, all right. And then after that, he would like talk to me a lot more, but like in a more, not in an intimate fashion, but as if we were intimate. And I'm just confused, right? Because it's at this point, I'm just, when you're dizzy tired, right? I'm just dizzy tired. I still need to drive my hiney home. And so I don't understand at all what's going on. And he was just like, later on, he's like, oh, thank you so much. And my friend's former fiance, he just acted like, oh, that's surprising, right? And I have, again, no, I don't understand. Like, I'm that tired, right? So he like, I at some point I beg off. Like, I'm like, all right, I've got to go, whatever. And I think I slept till like noon. Like I was just exhausted. And then I think maybe actually not even a couple days, like a couple weeks later, same ex fiance is like, hey, do you want to hang out at whatever? We're going to be at blah, blah club, whatever. And I'm like, oh yeah, sure. And he says, oh, well, so-and-so won't be there. And I'm like, okay. Right.
Sure.
Yeah. And he's like, is that a thing? And I'm like, no. Like, is it supposed to be a thing? Like, I don't understand. And he's like, no, I just want to make sure you're cool with it. So it turns out this guy was such a bad drummer that like they fired him that night or like the next day, like something crazy like that. So somehow he thought that pretending like we would somehow get his hiney into the band, which it did not, which honestly, I'm proud of that individual who I will not name for not saying, doing the stereotype of, oh, well, you were with this chick, so yeah, bring it, right? Like, no, he was like, no, you can't actually hold a tune, sweetheart. So
you're still a trash drummer. That's fine.
Like, professionalism still means something.
Exactly.
You have to actually play the drums.
You still have to know the songs. So yeah, no.
Sir, you still need to be able to play music. Drummers tend to be the hot ones, but like,
right? Drummers and bass players. Drummers and bass players.
Bass players.
Where you're like, you know what? I'll just stand near you if that's okay. Nothing actually has to occur. I just go like, boop, and then it's fine. So
I've never slept with someone who was in a band, which is crazy because y'all know that I'm crazy. And
yeah, I don't know.
I've never hooked up with someone who is in a band.
Like 80%. And by the way, that's not planned. It's this just weird, like somehow I actually attract bass players and drummers. I don't attract lead singers. I don't attract guitar players. It's always bass players and drummers who are like, hey. So
I think
I'm trying to go through mine. I'm like, no, I attract an eclectic mix of individuals.
Well, that's
Go
good.
me.
I platonically attract lead singers.
Platonic with a lead singer?
Platonically, my best friend in Puerto Vallarta is a like headline international performer who used to sing on Broadway and stuff. And then through him, I've met a bunch of other singers, like people who've been on America's Got Talent, and like
Oh, wow.
all this other
Hmm.
stuff. Like I'm friends with a lot of singers and like people from like Postmodern Jukebox. Like my friend Effie is in Australia now singing with Postmodern Jukebox. So like I have friends who are singers. I've never hooked up with a singer. I've never hooked up with anybody in the band.
Now, wait. Now, mind you, like the friend I mentioned before, who like I've known forever, like she's been lead singer. Like I've been friends with like female lead singers or like gay male lead singers. You know what I mean? Like those who are like front and center, 100%. But I've never dated anyone or been with anyone who was like, I just don't attract them.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean I didn't think they were hot. It just,
I feel like I'm like 100% entourage material. Like I'm down to travel with the band. I'm down to perform all the emotional support for everyone and like keep everyone grounded. I'm not going to perform. I'm not going to do anything. I will reap all the benefits of your fame while still providing like an emotional service.
I don't know. I honestly, it's like even my husband is a drummer and a producer, and he's also done lead singing. So I guess that's not fair to say I've never, but anyway, whatever. When we first started dating, like it's not like I saw him in concert and went, "Ooh, I need to follow you around." Like we met in a coffee house and just like hit it off, and it was like, "Oh, I'm a drummer," and I was like, "What?" Because I had dated, like, I mean, my first boyfriend was a drummer. Like, I've dated so many, actually, they're drummer or bass players throughout my life that it was like, it was just bizarre. And it was almost never, actually, never was it a case that I like saw them in concert and I was like, oh, you're hot, blah, blah, blah. Like, we met at some random location. And then later on, they'd reveal, like, oh, I'm a bass player and I play with blah blah band, and I'm like, oh shit. Who knew? Okay, well, this is interesting.
I feel like this is a story for another time, but like my friend down here, my best friend down here, Kevin, he sang on Broadway, he sang on Carnival cruises, so he's performed all over the world and everything.
Oh,
And we
yeah.
were friends for like a solid month before I ever saw him perform. And it was nuts the first time I saw him perform. So I was like I figured he would be good, but I didn't think he would be like that good. Like I was like, holy shit. Which is, I don't know. Also, I feel like I've never met anyone who's like my general type is the lead guitarist in the band. Right? Like, who's fucking the lead guitar?
That's rude.
No one wants the lead guitar.
No, I've never heard anybody say that.
Never.
It's weird when you think about it. Because like Halen, like that boy had more like stalker-y type individuals, like if you think about it, but you never hear about anyone saying, oh, I need to date him. They were all just like, I need to.
Maybe we should open a lot more cold cases by comparing them to lead guitarists of different bands who happen to be going through town.
We should. We could see if there's some like parallels going on.
I can pitch this to Wonderly.
Why not, man? Why not?
This is a podcast. I just need royalties. I don't need to produce it.
All good. All right. Well, with that, I mean, we are like,
we
don't care, and it doesn't fucking matter. But so with that, if anyone was watching, thank you for joining us for another Storytellers Happy Hour. If you are watching this and it's recorded, it is all good. We do this once a month. And if you have any suggestions in terms of like prompts or people that you'd like to see on it, we are not shy whatsoever when it comes to that. So just reach out and game on.
And thanks so much, Alicia, for
Thank
coming
you.
on
I'm
again.
so happy to be back. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right.
So awesome. I love having
Bye,
you
guys.
on. All right, bye.